The Ilyushin Il-62 is a Soviet long-range narrow-body jet airliner conceived in 1960 by Ilyushin. As successor to the popular turboprop Il-18 and with capacity for almost 200 passengers and crew, the Il-62 was the world's largest jet airliner when first flown in 1963. Being one of 4 pioneering long-range designs, it was the first such type to be operated by the Soviet Union and a number of Allied nations. The Il-62 entered Aeroflot civilian service on September 15, 1967 with an inaugural passenger flight from Moscow to Montreal, and remained the standard long-range airliner for the Soviet Union for several decades. It was the first Russian pressurized aircraft with non-circular cross-section fuselage and ergonomic passenger doors, and the first Russian jet with six-abreast seating and international standard navigation lights. Over 30 nations operated the Il-62 with over 80 being exported and others leased by Russian Sphere and a few Western airlines. The Il-62M variant became the longest-serving model in its class with some examples having been in use for over 3 decades. Special VIP and other conversions were also developed and used as head of state transport by some 14 countries. Expensive to operate compared to new generation airliners, the number in service was greatly reduced after the 2008 recession. The Il-62's successors include the wide-bodied Il-86 and Il-96, both of which were made in smaller numbers and neither of which was widely exported. Development. The Ilyushin Il-62 presented a proposal for a 4-engined long-range jet airliner in February 1960, receiving the go-ahead from the Soviet Council of Ministers on June 18, 1960. With the Successors Design Bureau being instructed at the same time to develop the NK-8 turbofan to power the new airliner. The official specification required that the airliner, designated Il-62, must carry 165 economy-class passengers over a distance of 4,500 km or 100 first-class passengers over 6,700 km. The Il-62 replaced the fast turboprop Tu-114 on long-range routes. As the Tu-114 was just entering service when the Il-62 was on the drawing board, Ilyushin had time for an unhurried design, test, and development program. This was useful, since the Il-62 did call for significant development. The Il-62 and the British Vickers VC-10 are the only commercial airliners with 4 engines fitted in twin-paired nacelles by the sides of, and beneath, a T-shaped empennage, although the Lockheed Jetstar business jet shares this configuration. In the case of Ilyushin, the configuration was dictated by TSAGI, the Soviet Union's aerospace agency, since Ilyushin's design bureau lacked the resources to engage in configuration studies. This layout allowed the wing design to be optimized for aerodynamic efficiency, without being cluttered by having to carry engines. In addition, the rear-mounted engines reduced engine noise in the cabin and allowed smaller vertical tail surfaces. These advantages are balanced by a number of drawbacks. The wing structure, without wing-mounted engines to relieve the wing bending moment, need to be heavier, as did the rear fuselage structure, which had to carry the engines. In addition, aerodynamic wash from the wing blankets the tail when the nose is pitched up, leading the aircraft into a condition known as deep stall. This called for complex and unreliable automatic stall warning systems such as stick shakers and stick pushers to prevent the aircraft getting locked into the deep stall condition, although the Il-62's wing was designed to prevent deep stall. Early aircraft display an evolution from thin or thick kinked leading and board edges to the ultimate thick and straight 1966 shape. The characteristic dogtooth also moved until fixed before production began. The engine installation also evolved, with the engine's longitudinal axis canted by 3 degrees from the horizontal. Thrust reversers were added to the outer engines, and the entire installation was slimmed down as production began. The prototype was grossly underpowered as its intended NK-8 engines were not ready and small Il-7PB turbojet engines had to be installed temporarily. The prototype with R-7PB engines first flew on January 3, 1963 but crashed after clipping a perimeter fence during a maximum weight testing flight of the development program. The production Il-62 was powered by the originally intended rear-mounted Successor of NK-8-4 engines. The first Il-62 powered with NK8 engines first flew in 1964. The Il-62M variant has more powerful and quieter Soloviev D30Ku engines and a fin fuel tank. Beneath the skin, the Il-62M has simpler and lighter single-slotted flaps and incremental aerodynamic improvements. Most important of these was the addition of spoilerons and the ability to use idle reverse thrust in flight during the final approach so as to shorten the landing run. Nearly all examples in service today are Il-62 milliseconds. In 1978, the Il-62MK was further developed to seat up to 198 passengers and carry some 2 tons more payload and/or fuel than the Il-62M. A version designated Il-62MK was designed as a much modified medium-range machine, though it never reached high production and was dropped from the program by 1978. Other versions were also planned, some stretched to seat up to 250 passengers and others suited to small airfields. None of those reached a detailed design stage. No civil military or military developments are known. The Il-62 has a conventional landing gear with an additional trademark lightweight landing gear strut at the rear of the fuselage which extends when the aircraft reaches its parking position. Aircraft with rear-mounted engines are usually tail-heavy when sitting empty on the ground, and to prevent the aircraft from tipping up on its tail, various devices are used for supporting the tail, from simple pogo stick-fixed struts on small aircraft, to lightweight extendable struts. Aircraft like DC-9 or Boeing 727 use an Airster door under their tail which serves the dual purpose of a tail support as well as an extra door for passenger loading. The Il-62 is the largest airliner with manual flight controls, using steel cables and rods, pulleys, aerodynamic and weight balances, and trim tabs. There are also indications that the Il-62 has a forward-mounted tank for water ballast. This may be used when the aircraft flies empty or lightly loaded. If this is a fact, it would rank the Il-62 alongside other airliners that use ballast, notably the French Caravelle and the Soviet Tu-154. Due to the rear-mounted power plants, the wings are aerodynamically clean, and takeoff and landing aids are employed without the disturbing effect of engine nacelles, resulting in free airflow over the dorsal wing surface. Thus the aircraft can fly through air turbulence of 16 ams without affecting its stability. Another key Il-62 trademark is the Sawtooth on the wing leading edge. This prominent feature acts as an aerodynamic vents vortex generator, and fixed leading edge droop flap. It ensures vice-free behavior at high angles of attack and assists efficient long-range cruise. The Sawtooth removes the need for hydraulic controls, stick shakers, and stick pushers. Interestingly, later models of the VC-10 also adopted this feature, in their case closer to the wingtips. Early NK8-4 engined Il-62s suffered from indifferent performance as well as engine fatigue overheating, sometimes leading to false fire alarms whereby the crew might be tempted to shut down paired engines to prevent contiguous engine and fuselage damage. Flying with only 2 paired engines on the same side would, however, render the aircraft unbalanced and difficult to control. Subsequent modifications to the Il-62 and the VC-10 largely rectified this problem. There were 2 fatal Il-62 losses involving engine failure, both occurring with aircraft owned by Aeroflot Polish Airlines, which had also leased a number of Il-62s from Aeroflot and Takeoff. The higher fatality accident was a fully laden Il-62M Flight 5055 on May 9, 1987 which experienced a rear fuselage fire that possibly went unnoticed by the crew, hence their decision not to land at one of 2 nearby airports. Control of the plane was eventually lost on the return flight to Warsaw, most likely due to one of the auxiliary fuel tanks fitted to some LOT Il-62s having ignited. The other was an unmodified NK8-4 powered Il-62 Flight 007 which crashed on March 14, 1980 with 87 fatalities after being fitted with an engine that had previously caused vibration problems when used on 2 other LOT aircraft. Power plant failure of the type that afflicted the LOT aircraft was extremely rare because bearing wear is generally identified by vibration tests during maintenance. At the time, However, LOT did not have equipment to test or fault diagnose engines of the size used in the Il-62. Unfortunately, this meant that any potential problem might not be identified between overhauls. There were other known instances of engine failure, but these did not result in loss of control. The LOT accidents involving different engine types was a fatal crash rate 30 times higher than the Il-62 average. At least one other LOT Soloviev D-30 equipped aircraft also suffered a similar engine failure around this time. After 1987, LOT introduced turbine vibration detecting equipment and shortened the time between inspections. It also adopted the dual flight control system used on some other Il-62s and deleted the auxiliary engine pod fuel tanks. These planes were subsequently sold to Air Ukraine in 1991/1992, which operated them until the airline closed in 2000. In 2010, 30 years after the loss of Flight 007, an investigation of previously unreleased IPN archives at Institut Permai unregistered trademark signer Rodowicz revealed that during the industrial unrest of the 1980s, LOT had been instructed by the PRL authorities to effect operational cost savings by over-exploitation of service life of its jet engines. Special Il-62 conversions. Several special conversions were made to the basic Il-62. The main ones being the Il-62 and Il-62M Salon VIP versions used by heads of state, and the Il-62M airborne command aircraft used by the Russian government. Although the Il-62 had been introduced during Khrushchev's time, it was during the Brezhnev era that Ilyushin was asked to develop the Salon versions, which have been used by Russian leaders ever since right up to the Putin years. The VIP examples were fitted with conference rooms and rest areas, rooms for the retinue, and service personnel and bodyguards, while the secure communication equipment enabled contact with Moscow and other cities from any part of the globe. Examples were also delivered to other countries including Czechoslovakia, Germany, North Korea, Sudan and Ukraine. An airborne command Il-62M was customized for the Emergency Response Agency EMACOM to provide evacuation transport for Russian citizens from foreign countries and act as airborne command post for these and other emergency situations. It operates in conjunction with another Il-62M and a fleet of Il-76, Il-76TD water bombers, and 72 and helicopters, which have operated in some 60 countries and is credited with having saved 50,000 lives since the agency was created in 1994. Apart from basic interior changes, RA-86570 features harsh-kitted engines and Honeywell electronics with global communication ability via satellite, and an Inmarsat system. The aircraft was used as a command post during the combat of forest fires in the Far East, when dealing with the Chechen terrorist attack in Kaspiysk when an apartment building was blown up, and to bring a Russian deputy foreign minister to Sajor in 1996, and from there collecting the crew of an Il-76 freighter who had escaped from the Taliban militia in Afghanistan. Design: the Il-62 is a conventional all-metal low-wing monoplane of riveted sectional semi-monocoque construction to fail-safe design principles. Its service life was initially set at 30,000 flight hours and subject to extensions and curtailments according to the quality of service procedures, inspection and manufacturer's bulletins. The aircraft features pressurized cabin and freight holds, duplex all-mechanical flight controls, though with twin electric motors for tailplane incidence control. Hydraulic nose-wheel steering, landing gear and tail strut actuation, and wheel brakes. The Il-62M has spoilers and lift dampers which extend automatically upon landing and are hydraulically operated. Control surfaces include a variable incidence tailplane with dynamically and weight-compensated elevators with trim tabs, triple-section tabbed ailerons which are interlinked with a torsion bar, spoilerons, spoilers and lift dampers, and pneumatically actuated thrust reversers on the two outboard engines. 27 VAC electrics are used throughout with a TA6 auxiliary power unit in the lower tail cone plus backup lead zinc batteries. The aircraft uses conventional hot air de-icing using engine bleed air. Its sea level is equivalent to 2,400 m above mean sea level and thereafter reducing to the equivalent of 2,400 m to cruise altitude. It was originally built with no automatic oxygen masks. Emergency supply comprises hat rack-housed oxygen bottles and masks for manual distribution to passengers by cabin crew. Since 1997, most aircraft have been retrofitted with automatic oxygen supply systems with drop-down masks. Its avionics include a Polyop-1 automatic flight control system, Doppler navigational radar replaced by triplex INSS on Il-62M after 1978 and by GPS navigation sets on many aircraft after 1991, triple VHF and HF flight deck radios, automatic direction finders, Soviet and Western instrument landing system receivers, vertical omnidirectional radio range and radio beacon receivers, duplex radio altimeters, automatic radio transponders, a full ICAO standard navigation lights fit, cabin tannoy and intercom systems. Soviet, Russian and Warsaw Pact sovereign examples are additionally fitted with triplex odd rods IFF air defense transponders identifiable by 3 closely spaced short aerials. Emergency evacuation systems include inflatable life rafts and manually extendable canvas evacuation slides. Most aircraft are now retrospectively fitted with emergency floor lighting strips and some aircraft equipped with automatically inflatable evacuation slides. Fire extinguishers are sited in engine nacelles, flight deck compartment, cabin crew rest areas and toilets. The Il-62 offers accommodation for up to 198 passengers in a single-class layout, seated 6 abreast at 84 cm seat pitch in 2 cabins separated by a vestibule, galley pantry and cabin crew rest area. There are 3 toilets, forward, midships, and aft. It has a buffet bar and a further cabin crew rest area in a vestibule forward, with a further optional cabin crew rest area aft. Typical mixed-class accommodation ranges between 128 and 144, seated 4 or 6 abreast, and a common single-aisle configuration for long-distance Aeroflot examples was first class 3 rows, business class 4 rows, economy class 17 rows. In this configuration, the central aisle in business and economy classes is quite narrow. A first-class compartment is optionally sited after forward entry door or just forward of midships entry door, with an economy compartment further forward in the latter case. Skycot fitments are located in hat racks, while later Il-62 milliseconds feature enclosed hat racks. Customer optionable interior fitments. No in-flight entertainment systems are available except a public address system that may be coupled to an open reel or audio cassette player. Individual aircraft were experimentally fitted with television sets for Soviet standard videotape entertainment during the 1970s. Some aircraft were retrospectively fitted with Western in-flight entertainment systems after 1991. A sideline to the Il-62 story concerns alleged industrial espionage. As the Il-62 was developed at about the same time as the VC-10, to which it bears a marked external resemblance, British Cold War commentators implied that the VC-10 design may have been copied by dubbing the Il-62 the VC-10 ski. No evidence of this was ever presented and, as noted above, later model VC-10s adopted some of the Il-62 wing design features. There are significant differences between the Il-62 and the VC-10, as the Russian type is larger, lifts a greater load, covers a longer range, and is suited only to developed airports vis-à-vis the British type's adaptability to up-country bases. Unlike the VC-10, the Il-62 uses conservative technology, such as mechanical control surface linkages, and is an entirely civil machine, whereas the VC-10 was designed to double as an airlifter as well as a military freighter. The Il-62 found more buyers and was built in larger numbers than the VC-10. And was still in civilian service whereas the VC-10 has long been retired from that role. China and Czechoslovakia were 2 countries that considered buying the VC-10, before opting for the Il-62. Operational history. After the introduction of the Il-62M, Aeroflot gradually upgraded and later replaced its fleet of NK-8-powered Il-62s with the newer Soloviev D-30Ku-powered Il-62M. Coupled with engine nacelle and other modifications, greatly reduced the chance of contiguous power plant damage. By mid-1973, The airline was operating some 60 Il-62s, and by 1989 this had increased to 165. The Il-62M had a dispatch rate with Aeroflot of 97%, with some examples logging as many as 17 flight HRS day, and it was described as the most reliable type in the fleet at that time. It set several international records in its class, mostly exemplifying a range capability far in excess of the conservative Aeroflot calculations applied in Soviet times. Some of these records were set by an all-woman crew of 5 captained by Irada Vitiprahova. With 10 tons of freight, the Il-62M had a maximum range of 10,300 km compared to 9,412 km for the VC-10 carrying the same weight. With a 23-ton payload, the Il-62M range was 8,000 km, compared to 6,920 km for a Boeing 707 with maximum payload. Because of its capacity, the plane has historically been used for emergency evacuation flights, one of the most notable being the landing of an Aeroflot-registered Il-62 at Santiago Airport, Chile on the night of September 10, 1973 in order to evacuate 147 Cuban embassy personnel. The Il-62 was said to be well regarded by pilots and passengers alike, especially for its strong directional stability in high turbulence, smooth cruising ability and very quiet interior in cruise mode due partly to engine placement. Although the original Il-62 was rated for a service life of 23 years and was criticized for heavy fuel consumption, upgraded M versions are sometimes rated for 50 years and have greatly improved operational economics. One of the drawbacks of the original Il-62 design was the lack of a cargo bay roller transfer system, which necessitated manual loading of pre-packaged baggage and cargo, thus making preparation of the aircraft rather slow. Conversely, there is relatively easy access to all serviceable mechanical components including the engines, whilst the plane's thrust reversal capabilities allows reverse taxiing without the need for tow vehicles. Powerplant overhaul intervals varied between specifications and maintenance procedures and between the thrust reverse capable outer engines and the inner ones. Czech Airlines operated an early Il-62 on a proving basis up to 3,000 hours between overhauls, which was well beyond the recommended intervals, which were nearer 2,000 hours, although Interflug were able to designate up to 5,000 hours with their service facilities. Subsequent upgrades to some Il-62 milliseconds provided for 6,000 hours overhaul intervals. Later examples of the Il-62M remain in regular commercial service, and the type also sees continued use as a VIP head of state transport. Although the plane's safety record does not equal that of new generation airliners, there were no fatal accidents involving an Il-62 between 1989 and 2009, during which time the highest number of planes were in service. With successive Il-62M upgrades and improved avionics, including triplex inertial navigation systems and enhanced flight controls to cope with the worst visibility, the plane gained a reputation as a very safe airliner whose record compares favorably with similar airliners, most of which are no longer in civilian use. Its total hull loss rate is lower than those of the Boeing 707 and EC-8, and near that of the VC-10/Super VC-10, although the VC-10 was only in civilian service for 16 years, and only 40 of 54 airframes were built as airliners. Several Il-62 per meter accidents over the first decades of operation mainly involved runway overruns or aborted takeoffs. The braking system employed the reverse thrust of the outer engines only, and if for some reason one or other failed to engage, the aircraft could become difficult to steer for an unprepared pilot. In 7 takeoff or landing accidents there were no fatalities, a testament to the high level of structural integrity. The Il-62 per meter fuselage features a strengthened hull with ski keel originally designed to allow for an undercarriage-up emergency landing. However, the trade-off for the reinforced airframe is the relatively high fuel consumption, and some airlines such as Interflug modified their planes to reduce fuel consumption. Production is said to have continued until 1995, although continuous production ended in 1993. Including prototypes, total production is surmised as being 289. However, the factory states 292. 4 aircraft remained unsold at the factory as of 1997, while the last delivery was reportedly RA-86586 of Magma, built in 1995, but only delivered in 1999 as a result of tariffs imposed on imported Western aircraft. The last airframe was built in 2004 for the Sudanese government, and the model is listed as an available option on the product page of the company's site, which may imply the existence of incomplete fuselages. Variants: Il-62A, initial production version, powered by 4 23,150-pound casks of NK8 turbofan engines, accommodation for a crew of 5 and 186 passengers. Il-62MA, improved version, powered by 4 24,250-pound Soloviev D30Ku turbofan engines, accommodation for a crew of 5 and 174 passengers, equipped with containerized baggage and freight system, modified wing spoilers and a revised flight deck, plus increased fuel capacity. Il-62MKA, medium-range version, powered by 4 24,250-pound Soloviev D30Ku turbofan engines, accommodation for a crew of 5 and 195 passengers, equipped with strengthened wings and landing gear for operations at higher gross weights. Operators, civil operators. As of August 25, 2012, a total of 27 Il-62 aircraft remained in airline service. Over 30 countries have operated the Il-62 since 1967, although exports did not begin until initial Aeroflot needs had been met. First exports were in late 1969 to CSA Czechoslovak Airlines. The pattern was similar with the Il-62M, of which the first export was delayed until 1977. Among Eastern Bloc nations, Bulgaria and Hungary did not operate the Il-62 series, although Hungary briefly leased one example pending Boeing 767 services in 1990. This was due, among other reasons, to heavy anti-Ilyushin lobbying by Tupolev in the former country and to commercial considerations in both countries whose airlines preferred to concentrate on short and medium-range routes. The German Democratic Republic, Czechoslovakia and Cuba were amongst the largest foreign customers for the Il-62. The former East German airline Interflug owned 24 examples. 21 in civilian service and 3 for Air Force and presidential use, including 6 Il-62s, 16 Il-62 milliseconds and 2 rare Il-62 MKs. Czech Airlines operated 21 planes between 1969 and 1997, including 15 Il-62s and 6 Il-62 milliseconds, of which 15 were registered under the famous CSA OK Jet designation, and 6 were leased from Aeroflot. Some of these planes were still operational in 2012. Cuba operated 27 different Il-62s, of which 12 were leased either from Aeroflot or TAROM, and 15 were owned by Cubana, which became a long-term operator with its first Il-62M purchase in 1977. After 2000, Cubana refurbished its remaining planes for international routes, on which they operated until March 2011. Poland operated 23 Il-62s and Il-62 milliseconds, including aircraft leased from Aeroflot and TAROM. The largest non-state operator of the Il-62 was Russian-based Domodedovo Airlines, which acquired 45 planes from Aeroflot that were used for domestic services, including continuous operations on the world's longest internal route, Moscow to Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, a distance of 6,800 km. Current and past operators include Aeroflot, Air India, Air Ukraine, Alam Airlines, Alpha Airlines, Avianego, Air Carao, Central African, CSA Czechoslovak Airlines, Cubana, Delavia, Deta Air, Domodedovo Airlines, Eastline Airlines, Jordan Airways, Green Air, Interavia Airlines, Interflug, Inversaja Airlines, Air Kokształ, Krasair, Libyan Arab Airlines, LOT Polish Airlines, Mala Copyright v Hungarian Airlines, Egypt Air, Mobile Magadan Airlines, Mekong Air International, Moscow Airways, New Millennium Air, Quadro Torero, Rossiya Airline, SAT Airlines, TAA Transasian Airlines, TAAG Angola Airlines, Seat Air, TAROM, Tretyakovo, VIM Airlines, United Iran Airlines, Uzbekistan Airways, Yana Airlines, and Civil Aviation Administration of China. From 1970, Air France and Japan Airlines wet leased a number of Aeroflot Il-62s for long-haul services, and from 1971, KLM Royal Dutch Airlines operated 9 Aeroflot-registered Il-62s for the Moscow-Amsterdam route. Due to strained relations between the USSR and US during the 1980s, in 1984 Aeroflot coordinated with Irish carrier Aer Lingus to use Shannon Airport as a hub for connecting flights from Moscow and Leningrad to link with the Irish carrier's New York routes. Aeroflot was also granted rights to use Shannon for flights to Cuba and South America. From 1992 Irish tour operators contracted Aeroflot to carry tourists to the eastern US and later the Caribbean, Central America and Mexico using Il-62 milliseconds. For its western U.S. links, Aeroflot Il-62s flew east from Moscow and routed via Alaska. On any given day, Shannon hosted up to 8 Il-62s and Il-86s. By 1995/1996, Shannon was handling 2,400 Aeroflot transit flights carrying 250,000 passengers per annum with Aeroflot crews being housed near the airport. By 1995, direct flights between Moscow and the U.S. became possible and the use of Shannon as a hub declined. Il-62 MMKs remained popular for civilian service in Russia up until the economic recession of 2008. In late 2008, Russian-operated planes were removed from scheduled passenger operations due to a severe economic crisis affecting major operators Interavia Airlines, Delovia and Domodedovo Airlines. As a result, Russia became the largest operator, but it uses the Il-62 for government service only. By September 2009 a total of 38 Il-62s remained in service worldwide, only one of which was the original series aircraft operating with Russian Air Force whilst others were M or Mk series aircraft. In 2011 Cubana retired its last civilian examples 33 years after receiving its first Il-62. Some other airlines and governments also operate small numbers of the type. In 2013 DETA Air ceased operations of Il-62M, a Kazakhstan, Air Trust, a North Korea, Air Koryo, a Russia, Russia, a Ukraine, Ukraine Air Enterprise, former operators, a Angola, TAAG Angola Airlines, a Cambodia, Yana Airlines, a Central African Republic, Central African, a People's Republic of China, Civil Aviation Administration of China, a Cuba, Cubana, a Czechoslovakia. Or SA Czechoslovak Airlines, Government of Czechoslovakia, a East Germany, Interflug, a Egypt, Egypt Air, a France, Air France, a Gambia, New Millennium Air, a Georgia, Air Xena, a Guyana, Guyana Airways, a Hungary, Malev Hungarian Airlines, Iran, Ari Air, Iran Air, a Japan, Japan Airlines. A Kazakhstan, Air Kokstau, DETA Air, a Latvia, Inversaja Airlines, Riga, a Libya, Libyan Arab Airlines, a Mozambique, LAM, a Netherlands, KLM, a Poland, LOT Polish Airlines, a Romania, TAROM, a Russia. Avia Inego, Beryl, Delavia, Domodedovo Airlines, Interavia Airlines, Krasair, Mavil Magadan Airlines, Russian Sky Airlines, SAT Airlines, VIM Airlines, a Turkey, Green Air, Istanbul, a Uzbekistan, Uzbekistan Airways, a Soviet Union, Aeroflot, a Ukraine, Air Ukraine, a Vietnam, Mekong Air International, a Zaire, Pride African International. Military operators. The aircraft has seen military use with the Air Force of East Germany and later the United Germany and is believed to have been operated by the air forces of other countries including Cuba, Gambia, Georgia, Libya, North Korea, Russia, Romania and Ukraine. It is used as an emergency response aircraft by the Russian government. In addition to military use, it has been used as a personal or head of state transport by Russia, Ukraine, East Germany, Georgia, Uzbekistan, Gambia, Mozambique, Sudan, Cuba, North Korea, and Czechoslovakia, the government of which used an Il-62 and 3 Il-62 milliseconds between 1974 and 1996. Some head-of-state examples were produced in VIP interior configuration whilst others were standard civilian versions. A Cuba, Cuban Air Force, a Gambia, Military of Gambia, a East Germany, Air Forces of the National People's Army, former, a Germany, German Air Force, former, a Mozambique. Military of Mozambique, former, a North Korea, Korean People's Air Force 2 Il-62 milliseconds in state service, a Romania, Romanian Air Force, former, a Russia, Russian Air Force, a Soviet Union, Soviet Air Force, former, a Sudan, Government of Sudan. Incidents and accidents. Since its first flight in 1963 there have been 12 fatal accidents during civilian service, namely, 9 crashes, 2 landing overruns and an aborted takeoff. The complete list of incidents include 8 of Il-62M. As of July 2012 there had been 23 hull losses from all causes including prototype testing, fires, runway overruns, navigational errors, and non-operational incidents, 48% of which did not involve fatalities, with 1,141 fatalities total. This figure and the list below includes planes that were still operable but were deemed uneconomic to return to service due to their age and/or flight hours. Within the group of comparable airliners the Il-62M had the lowest hull loss rate. There were no fatal accidents involving an Il-62 between 1989 and 2009. Aircraft on display. As the first long-range jet airliner to be put into service by a number of nations, some retired Il-62s have been converted into museums and other uses in countries such as the Czech Republic, Germany, Austria, Cuba and China. The best-known example was the Il-62 DDR-SEG from the former East German airline Interflug. On October 23, 1989, DDR-SEG was intentionally landed on a 900m short-grass airfield of a hilltop-style paragraph LLN Rhino in a famous but potentially dangerous and dusty maneuver. Fire trucks and ambulance crews were positioned on hand for the landing but were not needed. The jet is used to commemorate the site of the fatal crash of Otto Lilienthal at the Gollenberg Hill. Nicknamed Lady Agnes after Lilienthal's wife, it is now a museum with a fuselage divided between the Lilienthal collection and a popular wedding registry. In July 1983, another landing of an Il-62 on unprepared ground took place at Munino, Russia, when Ilyushin Il-62 chief test pilot Stanislav Blotsyuk delivered CCCP-86670 to the Munino Outdoor Air Force Museum. Specifications, data from Jane's All the World's Aircraft 1988 to Euro 89. General characteristics, crew, 5. 3 to 5 plus a 4 to 8 person cabin crew to operator specifications, capacity, 168 to 186 passengers, length, 53.12 meters, wingspan, 43.20 m, height, 12.35 m, wing area, 279.55 miles squared, empty weight, 71,600 kilograms, max takeoff weight, 165,000 kilograms, power plant, 4 Soloviev D30Ku turbofans, 107.9 kilonewtons each, fuel, 105,300 L, performance, maximum speed, 900 km per hour, range, 10,000 km with 10,000 kilograms payload, service ceiling, 12,000 m, rate of climb, 18 meters per second, see also. Aircraft of comparable role, configuration and era, Boeing 707, Douglas DC-8, Vickers VC-10, related lists, list of airliners, list of civil aircraft, references. Dawes, Alan. Ilyushin Il-62 a classic of its time. Air International, January 2004. Vol 66 No 1 PPA 30 Euro 36. ISSN 0306-5634. Gordon, Efim. Dmitry Komisarev and Sergei Komisarev. OKB Ilyushin, A History of the Design Bureau and its Aircraft. Hinckley, UK, Midland Publishing, 2004. ISBN 1-85780-187-3. Gunston, Bill. The Osprey Encyclopedia of Russian Aircraft 1975 Euro 1995. London, Osprey, 1995. ISBN 1-85532-405-9. Ilyushin Il-62. Aircraft of the World, No. 66, Group 2. IMP Alberta, 1997 Taylor, John W. Janes All the World's Aircraft 1988 Euro 89. Coulston, UK, Janes Defence Data, 1988. ISBN 0-7106-0867-5. Thiel, Georg, Airliner in Service Around the World, No. 2, IL-62. External links, pictures of Il-62, a complete register of all versions of Il-62s built, a pictorial overview of Il-62s operated by Germany.